Stephen, a 2-0 victory against Partick Thistle, and I suppose all the hard work and all the, the effort in the first half got you the 3 points.
Well, it did. We haven't traditionally started games well this season. First half of quite a lot of our games have been poor. We found ourselves goals down at half time. We've had to come back in the second half. So it was nice actually to be in the lead at half time. I said to Keith Lasley, I said, what do I say now? Because we're normally getting in trying to motivate the players to pick them up to try and get back into the game. So I think the key message at half time was try and manage the game. If we get a clean sheet in the second half, we win the game. So it was interesting to see if they could manage the game. We probably didn't get a control of the second half. We didn't make as many passes or build any kind of patterns of play. It was a little bit scrappy. But when you're 2-0 up, you can afford it to be scrappy. So the ultimate aim was to win the game, as all football games are. So there's ways to win it. I think we've played better in certain games this season. We've played more attractive football. We've been more open. We've created more chances. But today just showed a little bit of resilience, and thankfully we've got 3 points.
It was two different types of goals you scored. The first one, let's take that. Alan Campbell, gets on a score sheet, and I suppose that's probably a reward for his season more than this game, maybe more than anything else. Good finish in off the post as well. You'll be pleased with him and going ahead at that time.
Yeah, Alan started the season ever so well, and I thought over the kind of past month or 5 weeks he's kind of faded away a little bit. He hasn't been as effective in games, but I thought he was back to somewhere near his best today. He was making tackles in midfield. He's breaking the play up. He's quite prepared to take the ball under pressure and try and give us a kind of foothold in the game. So I think the goal's a little reward for him. He doesn't traditionally get many shots off or get many attempts on target. So when it landed at him, I was pleased he got the goal. The second goal is set plays. We've got big physical presence. Dylan Mackin and Louis Lang, Luke Watt and Ben Hall, big aggressive players. We should be getting more goals from set plays. So it was important that at set plays, you have to put the ball into an area. I think, at the start of it, Jack was trying to put too much pace on the ball, and the message to him was just put it into the area. Let us, go and attack the ball. Give us an opportunity of heading it as opposed to getting kind of feet high. So when we win the first header, then we get the second bit. So scrappy goal in the end, but I think that was probably enough to nudge us ahead. But then we were kind of in control of the game. Second half, as I said, it was just about managing the game, and eventually we got over the line.
Just focusing on that second goal, I suppose a bigger pleasing element was that the team followed in, because the first one was hooked off the line and you had 2 or 3 players battling to get in the ball, and it was Chucky who eventually put that in there. So that's also a pleasing element, not only winning the header but falling in the second chance too.
Well, it's that thing we've continually spoke about, has been ruthless. Yeah. If you win the first header in the box, don't be happy with that. Yeah. Always try and anticipate the ball may come off or the goalie may make a save. Likewise in our box, if you win the first header, can you win the second one? Can we clear a line? So it's just about them being ruthless. At times, even looking back last week at Hibs, I watched the game again, and we weren't probably ruthless enough in the box. At times we're winning the first header and hoping someone else gets the second one, whereas today it was more of an impact, like, I want to make sure I get on the end of it. And Ross McLean did, and it was tough for Ross because he didn't get on last week and he wasn't too happy. And I said to him today, you've got the chance to go and show then. You've got a chance to go and show what you're all about. So I thought his energy in general was very, very good. He played with a little bit of anger, which is good sometimes, a little bit of hunger. But you can't do it for 1 or 2 games. You've got to try and maintain that. And I said to the boys at the start, it's about trying to build on what we've done so far. If everybody pushes their performance level up by 5 or 10%, be selfish in what you're trying to do individually, then the team will benefit. And on top of that, Ben Hall was excellent. I thought Luke Watt was good. Jack McMillan was efficient again. So we're looking at players trying to build and build and build. The aim now is to try and build again for Sunday. Maintain what we've done today, but try and add to it.
You mentioned being ahead at half time. I think you were quite far ahead as well. I remember speaking to Thistle guys at half time and they thought Motherwell dominated it. Can it be hard then almost to motivate in your own mind? You think almost the job's done at that point, and the key is to try and G them up again. And as you mentioned in an earlier answer, almost didn't quite really get going again in the second half too much.
Yeah, it's difficult because normally when you're in the team who's getting beat, you start pushing men forward. Yeah. Players who are normally playing as wingers find themselves as centre forwards. They find themselves in different positions because they're wanting to chase the game and be open, and sometimes the ball breaks to them. So then, from a defensive point of view, you start to be a little bit wary of committing too many men forward because they're committing so many men forward. So it's like a game of chess, really. They're suddenly, their left winger ends up right wing and their right winger ends up at centre forward, and you suddenly think, that's not the pattern how the game was going. So then it's about managing it and making sure we don't get ourselves caught chasing the game, because we didn't need to chase the game. We didn't need to go and get a third goal. Of course, it would be nice to, but when you've got defensive stability like Luke and Ben and Louis Lang and Jack McMillan, I'm quite content that we can defend well enough in 1v1 situations. So we kind of get caught in between of, do we go for the third goal or do we try and maintain what we have? Probably at times we took an extra pass. We maybe should have been a little bit more patient. Once we got in the final third of the pitch, we're trying to put balls in the box and trying to force the issue. Where I was saying, listen, let's come back, be patient, circulate the ball a little bit more, and then eventually, the space will open. So it's about them kind of learning how to manage games, learning, as they get older, when they can go for the killer goal or when they just have to relax, try and enjoy what they're doing, and kind of see the game out.
You said to us after Hibs, you promised us that we'd get 2 wins in a row. Win, loss, win, loss, win, loss. It keeps up again today. Big cup tie on Saturday. Can you break that cycle and go WW?
Well, that's up to the players. You know, we'll certainly be working hard off the pitch to try and give them that, you know, incentive to do it. I think the incentive is to still be in the cup after Christmas. You know, that's got to be their aim. Irrespective of who we're playing, we've got to be in the next round. You know, cup football won't be about who plays the best on the day. It's about getting the result. The performance will be slightly irrelevant, but you know, we still have to have a good level of performance when you go to play against Kilmarnock. We've played them twice this year. We played them in a friendly down at Rugby Park and they beat us 2-1, and we played them at Livingston in a league game. We drew 2-2. So there's not an awful lot between the teams. There's not an awful lot between them. It's, can we get our front four, for example, affecting the game? Can we get Ben Hall playing like he did today, and look what playing like he did today? That's the challenge for the players. The challenge is always for them to say, okay, I've done well, that goes to bed. Now what do I have to do to get myself ready for the next game? And that's where they learn as younger players what they have to do, how do they get to that level of performance, how do they live their life, what they have to do away from the pitch. These things all come into it now. So can we get win-win? I sincerely hope so.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.